Welcome to the Face-to-Face Ministries podcast. I'm Kathy Little.
And I'm Melinda Wilson, and we are talking all things inner healing, true connection with Jesus, and the full benefits package of the cross. Thank you for joining us. Welcome back to Face-to-Face Ministries podcast.
Episode 16. I hope everybody is okay after last week's episode, because we introduced Dr. Jim Wilder and all that brain science stuff, and man, is it fascinating. It's like you have to keep chewing over and over and over again.
Gives you a lot to think about.
It's good stuff. It's good stuff. And it really does have some significance in how we connect relationally to God. And I'm telling you, it's just pretty amazing stuff. Learning about capacity and relationships and what PTSD is and all those fascinating things. And I'm excited because we still have more with Dr. Jim Wilder, a whole nother episode with Jim Wilder, and we're going to jump into that.
And this is one that you may have to rewind and listen to a few times over again when he says certain things and like, what?
What was that?
And or take notes. If you're driving, I advise you not to take notes
Probably
while you're driving. You can
listen
to it back at home. But yeah, enjoy installment number 2 by Dr. Jim Wilder.
Here we go.
Yesterday I heard you talking about suffering versus trauma. And I want to go back. I wanted to go to that, but I also want to talk about, and maybe it correlates together. You're talking about building capacity, building, you said joy levels. What does that mean? Share with us what that means. What does it mean to build capacity? What are you talking about? And how on earth do we build joy?
Well, your nervous system operates a very similar way to muscles. And so by repetition, especially repetition with some kind of load, your muscles get stronger and stronger and stronger, and you can lift more and more weight. We're very familiar with that sort of thing. The nervous system is pretty much the same way. It builds capacity, it builds nervous system connections and chemical capacity to handle larger and larger loads. And we can actually scan and measure exactly how much of a load activity-wise you have going on, because you'll be burning a certain amount of sugar and oxygen and stuff like that. So cumulatively, this builds strength in nervous system. Now, unlike a muscle which gets larger, the nervous system simply gets more active. So you get a lot more activity, you get higher voltages, you get that sort of thing going on. And so we could actually scan your brain and tell how much joy you've accumulated, because joy is the only thing that your brain actually wants to practice of the emotions. Would you like to practice something that'll make you sad again?
No.
Scared again? Mad again? Angry? Disgusted again? All those things your brain goes, oh, well, if I can avoid that, I will. That's why they're unpleasant emotions, right? But I said, will this make you joyful again? Your brain goes, yeah, I'll try that, okay? You want more of that? So, in fact, when babies are growing the most of this, which is during the 9th month of life, they will practice up to 8 hours a day doing nothing more than joy smiling with available caregivers. So if you've got an important bond with them, they'll smile, and what happens is, starts with a little tiny smile, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger until, it's like all I can take. Now you got a lot of voltage, and then you turn away, the baby will look up and to the left to disconnect the circuit, and then their heads will drop down, and if you looked at their faces, they look like they're depressed. But what they're actually doing is quieting themselves. And now the secret is, when you quiet yourself, your brain has to release serotonin. And most of us know that depressed people are low on serotonin. You've probably heard that. Almost all the antidepressant drugs are serotonin related in some way or another. But what it means is your body isn't releasing enough serotonin, and so you become exhausted, and that's what we call depressed. But every time you do this cycle, like I smile, I'm joyful, and then I quiet myself, my brain releases serotonin, and it starts growing its capacity to do that. And the more repetitions I get, the better I get at releasing serotonin on demand. So now anytime I need to quiet myself, my body just goes, oh, we have got loads of serotonin up here. We'll just dump it on that. And now if it's joy, it lets us quiet right down so we can smile again. You know, like we do this cycle, it'll be about 6 to 10 seconds of smiling and then a rest cycle, 6 to 10. So and the normal rate would be about maybe 6 to 10 cycles in a minute of joy and quiet between a baby and a caregiver. If you do that for 8 hours a day for a whole month, when your brain is growing all of these nerve endings, you have a huge ability internally to release serotonin on demand. Now if something bad happens, you go, well, my nervous system's on fire, I'll just quiet that down. But if I don't do that, at about 4 years of age, your brain will go through and delete the systems that haven't been used. So if you haven't been using your serotonin system very much, it goes, well, we're not using the serotonin, clear it out of here. It's a lot like the flowers on trees in the springtime. You know, like on an apple tree, if every one of them turned into an apple, you'd break the tree. So the tree goes through and it clears out all of the ones that didn't get used, didn't get fertilized, and so you just have a few apples. And the brain does pretty much the same thing. It goes through these springtime in the brain, and then it clears out what didn't get used, and the ones that are kept are the ones that grow bigger and bigger and bigger. So if you got your serotonin system growing, the ability to self-quiet is the strongest predictor of mental health for a lifetime. Because you can handle an awful lot if you can quiet yourself down after that. So joy is how you practice the need to quiet. I hope that made sense. So I'll be glad to build joy, but what actually saves me is not the joy part, but the quieting the joy afterwards. Every time we smile, then we quiet and we smile. It's the quieting half of the cycle that's actually building your capacity. So the interesting and good news about that is that the part of your brain that does the joy, the right orbital prefrontal cortex, retains the capacity across your entire lifespan to still grow new nervous system tissue. So it's the only part of our brain that reliably grows again. There's some memory circuits that will grow, but the one that keeps the same ability it did as when you were an infant across your lifespan is joy, that joy center. So it's never too late to develop more joy, and joy means someone's glad to be with us, right? So you ask the question, how do you do that? Well, you have to find somebody who's glad to be there. And that's, with humans, that's the harder thing. But God's people actually are supposed to be people who are joyful. Jesus said, the reason I spoke these things to you is that my joy might be in you and your joy might be the fullest joy possible. And we're supposed to practice that with others. So wherever his people are, there should be joy building. These should be the joyful environments. I think one of the reasons that Christianity hasn't worked very well is we've not practiced a whole lot of joy. But where we do, you're building resilience into the nervous system and helping people to do the exercises that will help them manage the rest of life and the things that go wrong.
Let's talk about Immanuel, the Immanuel approach. You know, I had a very lengthy interview with Carl Amen in January, and tell me what the Immanuel approach is and why is it important to learn how to connect with Immanuel?
When I talked about your brain trying to solve problems when it's an unstable state and it doesn't run very well, the thing about your brain is it's looking for who wants me, who will always want me and always be with me. And human beings are not very predictable that way, not terribly reliable. But there's a God who sent his Son to earth to be with us and promises that I'll never leave you or forsake you, that nothing can separate you from my love. If we can manage to connect with that and experience that in any significant way, it pulls your brain into the most stable of all possible configurations, the best learning environment, the best problem-solving environment. If you can keep it in that stable state, you can solve a lot of problems your brain can't solve when it gets unhappy, right? So when I'm in that stable state, it also turns out I'm most aware of God's presence. So we put those things together. God always wants to be with me. I'm most aware of God's presence. So if I use, am I aware of God's presence in some way as the sort of the compass, we're going to stay on this course, and as soon as I lose God's presence, I'll come back to God's presence. Suddenly we've found a way to stabilize your brain on whatever we're thinking about. And because God isn't just like a magnetic force or something like that, he's not inert, he's interactive, we find that God also, as he's guiding you to think about your life, doesn't bring up topics that are too intense for you to deal with right now. Now we've talked about capacity, right? But sometimes you lost capacity simply because you didn't sleep well last night, or you got the flu. There's all kinds of things that influence our capacity. We're trying to quiet all kinds of other problems, you know. But God knows that, and since he cares about us, he guides us down that path so we never overwhelm our capacity, and that's actually the fastest path to recovery. Even though it might not be taking on the biggest of all problems first, by staying on this path, we don't get worn out, we don't get hurt, we don't get damaged on the way. We just keep on the path that steadily brings us towards more health, better resolved traumas. And so the beam we're on is, can I still sense God's presence? What does he want me to know? Where does he want to take me?
Let's talk about using Immanuel in a practical way, using the Immanuel approach in a practical way. If I'm by myself, no one's around me, and obviously I need to connect with Jesus. I have to have that connection first and foremost before.
Right. If you're never connected, that's a hard spot to start from, But I think when Carl and I were working on this together, the place where we found the overlap was we knew that trauma is memory mapped. In other words, what brings up traumas are your memories, right? Well, what brings up your relationships are also memory mapped. So if I remember an important relationship, it activates in my brain the effects of that relationship. And so the portable part of Immanuel is sort of double. One is God's always there, but our nervous system doesn't always know. But we can remember times when we did know he was there. If we activate those memories, it actually puts our brain back into the, I'm remembering that. We load in those characteristics. It stabilizes our brain and by having access to the memories. So typically in the Immanuel process, you'll do two things. One is you'll say to God, would you help me remember? And God can actively help you remember. And the second thing you will do is you will go back and then focus on sometime when you knew that God was with you. And the memory as well as the active presence of God, especially if we've practiced this in this emotional state. So if you've never practiced it in fear before, it'll be very hard to do the first time. In fact, it'll seem impossible the first time. The second time, it'll seem like a blessed miracle. The third time, it feels like faintly familiar. The fourth, fifth, and sixth time, if you practice it for a whole month, which is how long it takes for a system to myelinate or become hardwired in your brain. So you practice this daily for a month. Now your brain is beginning to have a habit of it. It's going like, oh, I know how to do this. I've learned this skill. Now it becomes much easier to activate that under difficult conditions. So I remember Carl talking about how he was driving around in a car one time and he thought to himself, well, I can do this in the office. I wonder whether Jesus would be present with me while I'm in the car. First time he tried it outside of an office. It was like, oh yeah, since I learned it in there, yeah, he's here with me too now. I've never tried doing it here before, but the practice of the, this kind of mind state was now portable for him, whereas before it took a lot of, everything had to be just right to do it the first few times. God's active presence and the memory lets us remember where he is, and once we're connected with that, what effect would God's presence have on us? Well, when it's really God, we're always grateful. So we're looking for things that make us feel thankful, grateful, appreciative, because that'll be the emotional tone of what we're looking for. Now, when I'm frightened, let's say, like in an airplane or something like that, my brain will remember everything I'm scared of, but it won't remember everything I'm grateful for. So I actually make a physical list, or sometimes in my phone I'll carry a series of pictures that remind me of times when I was thankful, appreciative, enjoyed. So I can actually pull them up and look at them going, oh yeah, that's what I'm trying to remember right here. And then these physical sensory things help us remember. So we're taking it in steps. Having trouble remembering, now take some deep breaths, get your adrenaline down. Now I can look at the picture. So we just, there's a series of practices that you can learn like that to get your nervous system back into a range where it can remember that you're not alone, that there is hope. This is also going to pass. So the question of how does this, like this trauma recovery or whatever, cross over to theology? Well, whenever I ask a person about a trauma, I ask them, do you remember God being there? 100% of the time they say no. Then I'll ask them if they know God, was God there? Well, the answer in theory, which they actually usually believe, was yes, I think he was there. I said, well, if he was there and your brain doesn't know it, you have an incompletely processed memory. Because everything that was happening, you're not aware of. So would you like to know what God saw? What's going on from God's perspective? And, the answer is almost always yes. I'd like to know what that is. I don't know how that'll help, but I would like to know. And the odd thing is when you see it from God's perspective, what makes it trauma is always I was alone. When you see it from God's perspective, your brain suddenly realizes, hey, I wasn't alone. And furthermore, there was someone with me that actually cared about what was happening to me, because that's always what happens. So is God always with us? That's the theology. God's always present. God is always loving. He always cares about what's happening to us. He also promised us that we'd suffer. So it isn't like he doesn't know this is happening. And when we experience God's caring and his sharing fully in our suffering, which is what theology tells us, but it actually becomes part of our practical experience, that is how we find the two overlapping. Now, theology would fail us if in some of these places God didn't show up or God didn't care. But so far in my life, we have yet to hit the first place where God wasn't there and God didn't care. And so the theology that God will always be with you proves to be true in people's experience.
We talk about knowledge is, what do we say? Information is helpful.
Experience is memorable, but encounter is transformational.
How does that correlate with brain science and actually changing our brain? Information, yeah, it's cool. We can learn about a fact about a certain dog breed, but what's going to bring transformation? Let's talk about Jesus. Well, we can learn about who he is and read the doctrine and theology, but what's going to bring the transformation?
Well, the information goes into the sequential part of your brain. So if what you need is a strategy or a process, having the right information will actually help you go in the right direction. So trying to get back here from lunch, our GPS sent us in the wrong direction, not very helpful. All we needed was the right information. And so for problem solving, we need the information. The experience lets us know that that's real, and so that's more right hemispheric, kind of like, this fits with my reality. But we don't care all that much about being right, and we don't care all that much about just experiencing all of reality. We want to know who we are, and that's relational. Who I am to you and who you are to me, and how we see each other, particularly since the brain can't perceive itself directly. We always know who we are because of how others see us. That's how your brain was configured. So in this relational reality. We have a chance to become someone we've never been before, or discover who we've always been and never knew. And that is what actually
And how much more
us.
important then is to have our identity in Jesus, because if I don't know who I am, apart from someone else telling me who I am or reflecting back to me, then the God of all truth tells me who I am. Doesn't that make me who I am then? And I can be transformed.
The limitation of our brain is it only knows who we are based on who we've been up until now. And if we happen to have been wrong so far, we're going to be miserable, but we think that's who we are. And God can show us who we're going to be for all eternity, even if we've never been that before. So to discover who we are created to be, we'll never find that out aside from God seeing us and God's people confirming to us, yeah, that is who God is creating. That's the really good news of living in this eternal kingdom.
I'll tell you, that's so much to chew on, isn't it? I love that what he was just saying about how our brain only knows who we are based on who we've been up until now. But God can show us who we were always meant to be and who we will be for eternity. I love that, because just like Jesus spoke to Peter and he said, "You are the rock, I'm going to build my church on you," before he was going to deny him, it's like God knows who he's created us to be and who we will become and who we will always be. And that's really amazing and beautiful that, you know, our brains may only know what they know up until now, but having an encounter with Jesus can change the trajectory of your life.
I think that's why it could be difficult too if someone says, imagine your life without fear, or imagine your life without anxiety, or imagine your life, you know, if you didn't experience these negative emotions that when this happens or that happens. And I find that almost impossible to imagine, because this backs that up, that I can't really even imagine whatever I'm being challenged with, or, you know, trying to imagine being free from fill in the blank, because only Jesus has that picture. And I could probably try to imagine, because I have a really good imagination, but it's going to look pretty warped or distorted compared to what Jesus would show me about myself, which is why it's vital and critical to get our identity from him. But also he talks about getting our identity from those around us. And that's true, that we mirror one another. And it's why it's so important to build one another up, to encourage one another, to honor one another, and to speak the truth about what we see about the other person. And it doesn't mean, you know, completely ignoring someone's really bad behavior or something, but instead of pointing out the good things that we see in the person. And even if it's not horrible behavior, I need to be reminded of who I can be. And often it takes someone on the outside to, in fact, not that long ago, I was encouraged to ask people who know me and love me what they love about me and what they like about me. And it wasn't a prideful thing. It was I need to be reminded of how people see me, because I'm not seeing myself really well right now.
Yeah.
And so I talked to about 4 or 5 people that really love me and know me for quite a few years. And they said, this is what I like about you. And all of them had something different and unique to say. And then there were some common threads, but it was so life-giving and affirming and encouraging, also confirming to what God says about me. But it was really, really helpful to have. And so I would encourage you, if you're not feeling, maybe you're in a season where you're, I don't know, not feeling great about yourself or forgetting who you are. Not even talking about super low self-esteem, although I think we all have seasons where we are in that place. But ask a few people around you that you know love you and that you love and trust. Hey, what do you like about me? What qualities do you see in me that you like or that you love? Why are you friends with me?
Well, and it's kind of like mining for gold, you know, and the whole culture of honor stuff that Danny Silk talks about, he's connected with Bethel Church in Redding, California. He talks a lot about honor and calling the gold out of people because they can't see it for themselves. And so somebody on the outside can say, hey, I see this, I see this, I see this, I see this. This is who you really are. This is your true self. This is who you are intended to be. This is your destiny. And calling someone else's attention to that, it can be very transformational. But even more significant when you hear God speak those things to you in an Immanuel encounter, when you are connecting with his presence and feeling his presence and realizing, hey, this is what God's saying about me. Because again, that's an experiential encounter, whereas data processing happens in that left hemisphere, and it isn't always experienced or encountered until our creative brain, our right brain, has an interaction with it, and then we can change our mind about things when we've had that experience and encounter. So that is really beautiful, that whole concept of, hey, we need to stay in the presence, keep connected to him, and allow him to speak life to us. And we need to be in healthy relationships where other people can mirror back to us what they see in us and call out the gold in us.
Probably one of the most significant things he talks about, which I have heard for quite a while before, just because I've been exposed to Dr. Jim Wilder and Layman and Life Model Works teachings for a while, but need to be reminded of that on a regular basis of learning to quiet is the greatest indicator of long-term mental health. Even more than experiencing joy is being able to quiet myself when I'm experiencing negative emotions like fear, anger, hopeless despair, anxiety,
all the big negative emotions.
The big negatives that our brain doesn't really love. It's wired in there, but it doesn't love it. Like he said,
it's wanting joy.
It's going to move toward joy. And the only way that that's going to happen is if we actually learn how to quiet ourselves. That's self-regulating is what it's doing. And he's talking about babies. They're learning how to do that even before they have cognitive language, or they're obviously they're not consciously thinking about it. It's just instinct. I think that sometimes babies do it better than we do it as adults because we're so bombarded with things.
Yeah, and when they have that healthy connection and they're learning that, then their body is gaining capacity. And if we can foster that and encourage that in people as they're growing and developing, that can really give them a great ability to quiet throughout their lives. But a lot of people miss those things early on for one reason or another. And when you miss them, when you're supposed to get them, you have to find a way to pick them up later on. And some people never do.
And you may be wondering, what the heck do they mean by quieting yourself? And actually, Jim Wilder, if you go on YouTube and type in shaloming your body, as in shalom, shaloming your body, Dr. Jim Wilder, in 6 minutes, he'll give you some very practical steps in how to quiet your body. And basically, it's some deep breathing, but it's triggering, say you're in fear, it's triggering the fear response and then coming out of it and then triggering it and then coming out of it. It's like getting a record stuck, many of you wouldn't know what a record is, or a CD, or that's even too old for some of you, but something that keeps skipping. And how do I get it off? How do I eject that thing? I actually need to trigger the emotion and then come out of it and then trigger it, and it short circuits it. And a lot of it involves some deep breathing, but it's physiological. But I would just recommend you do that. Learning to quiet ourselves is not just mentally, but we do it physiologically and physically, slowing down our heart rate, slowing down our breathing.
Well, I'm really glad that you mentioned where to find that on YouTube, because I know some people are probably so fascinated with this and they want more information. And so to get some more information on what we're talking about here, you can go to lifemodelworks.org. And that is Dr. Jim Wilder, and you can find out more there. There's several people that are connected to Life Model Works and these brain skills, and we've interviewed all of them. I think we interviewed all of them in one day when we were in Denver. And so we have a lot more coming from the Life Model Works people and people who are all connected to Jim Wilder and and these life skills. Chris and Jen Corsi, we've got them coming up, and they teach on the 19 life skills, that brain skills that we can develop. And I'm really excited because next week we're actually going to share the interview with Ed Curry, and he specializes in addiction recovery, and he talks about the brain science and the relational component to deal with those who are struggling with addiction. And wow, that interview is really, really powerful, because I know pretty much everybody's addicted to something, whether it's a cell phone, Facebook, or crack cocaine, or anything in between. We all have that tendency to bond to whatever it is that gives us a hit of dopamine, and it should be done relationally. And so we're going to share that interview with you next week on our podcast. So be sure to stay tuned. Be sure to subscribe. We're so glad that you guys have listened, and we'd love for you to subscribe. Give us a 5-star rating, write a review. That would be really helpful. I know Apple Podcasts makes that more easy than some of the other platforms, but it'd be really great to get that. And just share the podcast, get the word out, because this is really important stuff and really helpful as well.
Yeah, thank you for listening. Again, we kind of go through this spiel every week, but we need to, because we are trying to get the word out.
Yes.
And if you haven't shared it yet, please do. If you haven't rated, given us a rating yet, please rate. Give us 5 stars. If you want to give us less than that, just don't. Just 5 stars or nothing.
Do you find the content valuable?
If you find
yes.
It, yes, please. And please, seriously, if you have any questions, contact us.
Yes.
We have upcoming interviews, and right now, currently, you could actually text us or email us some questions for people that we are going to interview. I know this is time.
It's called evergreen content.
Yeah, it's evergreen. But anyway, if it's like 2024 that you're listening to this, it is too late to get those questions in for the people that we're interviewing. But if you're listening in 2024, thank you, because all of this is still totally relevant.
Yeah,
That's not going to change.
That's totally true.
Please like us on Facebook. Find us at face2faceministries.org, all one word. Follow us on Instagram at face2facemin. Sign up for our monthly newsletter. We will not spam you.
Nope.
And we would love to hear from you.
Yeah, it'd be great to hear some questions, some comments, some feedback. We'd like to know, are you listening? Are you liking? Is it helping you out? Is it interesting?
Because we just sit and do this in the room, facing each other, and we're talking to this audience that we don't see. And coming from a theater background, do you know how weird that is? I need some interaction, people. I need some feedback. Yes, I do. So please let me know you're listening. We know people are listening because of the download numbers, but tell us how you feel about it, what it's doing for you, if it's helping you. We'd love to hear from you.
That'd be great. Yeah. And we're going to continue to get content. We've got a huge schedule over the next few months. Getting new content for you, and we're pumping it out as fast as we can. Every Tuesday we're popping new content out, so keep following, subscribing, and we'll see you next week.
Yes, please join us.
All righty.
Bye.
See y'all.